The Echo of the Fifth Beat. Chapter 1. A Metronome for the Heart. The metronome arrives in a shoebox taped with 3 strips of dull, old-fashioned brown. I cut the tape with my thumbnail, peel it back like healing skin, and lift the lid. Inside, a wooden pyramid lies wrapped in newspaper that smells faintly of rain and attic. It is mahogany, the varnish crazed with hairline cracks that glitter like thin rivers. The brass bezel is stained the color of dried tea. The pendulum rod is a spine of nicked steel. Whoever packed it threaded a ribbon the clean blue of hospital scrubs through the metronome's little handle, as if to lead it like a pet. Finally, I whisper, and it's not a word so much as a sigh of recognition. I own a shop called Second Hand, which is less about watches than it is about anything that measures time. Clocks, sandglasses, dial timers, marine chronometers, railway station faces, nurses' watches, the occasional cuckoo, anything with a beat. I restore them on a long oak workbench with a leather mat and lamp burns like stars. It is a place where people come to fix what is supposed to be unbreakable: rhythm, routine, the idea that moments arrive in a fair line instead of a snarl. When the metronome was still a rumor, an estate sale listing sent by a client with a taste for the dramatic bar. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The photograph had been grainy, the label handwritten, Dr. Marek's Metronome, used in clinical hypnosis, 1,949, 1,972. I hated the part of me that thrilled to the word hypnosis. It had the same sharp, forbidden glimmer as the blue ribbon in the box. I reached into the newsprint heat and lifted the metronome by its sides. It was heavy. Honest, the kind of instrument made to be carried from room to room, from confession to confession, and placed on desks with care. When I set it on my bench and pushed the lid open, the smell of old oil moved out like an exhale. I set the weight at 88 beats per minute allegro, fleet but not frantic, because that is the pace at which the world feels most bearable. And then I set the pendulum free. Tick! For a fraction of a moment, the sound isn't present, and then it is there with me more intimately than breath. Wooden resonance like the world's smallest door, opening and closing somewhere I can't see. Tick! Time tightens into a silver wire. Tick! On beat 5, I taste iron. I swallow hard and tell myself I'd cut my thumb on the tape and licked it without thinking, but my hands are clean, no red. The tick persists, and with it a pulse of heat at the base of my throat that feels ridiculously like fear. I reach out to steady the weight and knock the blue ribbon. It flips and catches on the light, revealing black ink script embroidered along its length, so faint I only notice as it grazes my wrist. Asterisk, asterisk. If you sleep, keep your hands above the blanket. Asterisk, asterisk. A joke, I tell myself. An old instruction for the clinic, the way doctors label everything: dispose of sharps, wash hands, handle with care. I swallow again, the iron gone now, the fear thinning to embarrassment. The bell on the shop door rings. The metronome keeps time for us. Sorry, I say out of habit, even though no one has spoken yet, and turn. He is standing just inside the door, hands in the pockets of a camel coat that looks expensive without trying. He has the kind of face whose handsomeness announces itself as a fact rather than an argument. Clean lines, mouth like a secret he keeps and will eventually share. He takes one step forward, attention sliding past the shelves of ticking and swinging and humming to find me exactly. The door closes. Outside, the city's winter light is bruised lavender. "Are you Mira?" he asks. "Yes." The name still sometimes feels borrowed, though it is the one the city knows, the one on the lease and the sign and the receipts. "Can I help you?" I asked the question to be sure the shop wasn't an echo. It sounds like a chorus in here. He smiles. It is not a show of teeth but of warmth, like the sun behind a scrim. "I'm Julian. The metronome ticks like a heartbeat we're being polite about." "You're here for something specific, Julian," I say. It is part observation, part defense. People rarely arrive in second-hand by accident unless they are drunk with nostalgia. "I am," he says, and steps closer. He moves like someone who knows the exact weight of his own bones. When he reaches the bench and the metronome's pulse folds into the space between us, his gaze drops to it with such uncomplicated interest that I feel myself become careful all at once, like a hand around a candle. "That's new." He doesn't mean recent. He means new to me. "Dr. Marix," I say before I can think better of it. Some clients are sensitive to the history of the things they own, and I have made it a point not to show my mess of the past to just anyone. He looks up at me so quickly I feel it on my skin. He knows the name. It slips over his face like a shadow. "I wondered if you'd found it," he says softly. "I sent the listing, and oh my." I look at him and see in him the shape of it, the neat grammar of his words, the minute clinical interest that never quite leaves his expression. "You were the anonymous client. I should be annoyed. I am not. The annoyance has to travel through a web of curiosity that slows it to a caress. And I'm sorry for the art of not saying so. I wasn't sure you'd accept the job if I knocked and said, 'Hello, I'm the man who keeps you supplied with haunted instruments.' You make me sound like a witch," I say, trying to be wry. The blue ribbon brushes my wrist again, as pointed as a cat's tail. "Witch, healer. The distinction is often a matter of who is in love with whom." His eyes move over my face and settle. "Could I trouble you to start it?" "It already is." I don't mean to reveal how attuned I am to the metronome's presence. The admission slips out like dream talk. "Good," he says. "I like to hear what I've brought you do its work." The shop has a ceiling speaker that sometimes relays news from the cafe next door when they forget to switch off the wireless. An anchor speaks about a woman found in the river. Words like submerged and scarf and suspicion float into the shop and dissolve into the ticking. Julian's attention flicks not toward the speaker but to my mouth, as if he's reading the news from my lips. "Do you remember him?" he asks. "Dr. Marek?" "No. He died before my time," I say too quickly, as if it could have been otherwise. "You knew him?" "I knew of him." Julian places 2 fingers on the bench an inch from the metronome, as if he's taking the pulse at its throat. He leaves his hand there long enough for the rhythm to imprint itself in the space between his knuckles, then withdraws it, gentle, as if not to scare a small animal. "Your work is exquisite," he says. "Subtle enough not to disturb the original heartbeat." "Thank you." I glance past him to the display case where I keep the instruments I won't sell. A collapsed pocket watch the color of liver, a nurse's fob watch, with the minute hand worn to a ghost from counting respirations, a child's tin timer with a picture of a cake on the face and a hairline crack like a smile. Sometimes they've been waiting too long to be touched. "And sometimes touching is the whole point," he says. He leans, not quite toward me, not quite toward the metronome. "May I ask?" "No. It is unkind and too fast." The word leaves us both startled. He straightens. There is an ambiguity to his posture that reads as both glacier and bow. Of course, I didn't mean I begin. The blue ribbon is a blade against my wrist now. I slide it under the metronome like sheathing a knife. He lifts a hand as if to say, we can edit the moment after the fact, and asks instead, gently, have you wound it? Its escapement is healthy, the mainspring strong. It would run at least 7 minutes if I set the weight wrong. I sound like a manual, and I hate it. Yes, I wound it. Twice? His eyes hold mine like a question he has been waiting to ask in a way that suggests there are 100 other ways to ask it. Once, I ask, he says, because the Merrick metronome was rumored to run on its own in a certain room. The clinic? My tongue feels thick. The tick seems louder. He nods. It's a story he encouraged for the sake of theater. Doctors have always been susceptible to ritual, but sometimes a performance calls something audience-shaped out of the dark. There were reports of the pendulum keeping time with breath. Whose breath? I hear my own. The person it belonged to, he says, in the way that anything we hold long enough learns to answer to our name. I walk around the bench to the register, which is not for show. I need an ordinary action. I need the clack of keys and the drawer's obedient ding to remind me that commerce resists myth. Do you want something repaired? I ask. Or did you come to tell me a ghost story and leave? And to aid? He smiles again, not regretful but human, and takes from his coat a flat envelope the size of a photograph. He slides it across the glass. I came to ask you to hold on to this for a week. If no one asks for it, you may open it. If someone does, you should give it to them, and you should not tell them my name. In the glass reflection of the counter, I see his coat and my sweater, and the metronome swaying like a needle in a compass. I place the envelope below the counter without looking at it. Who is someone? You'll know, he says, with softly infuriating certainty. Is it theater again? I ask. Isn't everything? Julian's eyes are the deep slate of river water just before storm. I'm not playing with you, Mira. There is a fine crack in his voice when he says my name, and I have the sense I am missing something, a reference, a context, the fifth beat no one hears, but upon which the rest of the rhythm depends. What are you, Julian? At this, he laughs for the first time, not because it's funny, but because the question is an old friend. A psychiatrist, he says. I work with police sometimes. For a week, I'm also your very ardent admirer. Of my work. Of your work, he agrees, and then, without the fig leaf, and of the way you listen, he leaves more quietly than he arrived. The bell tings and the door sighs and the city exhales into the shop. I watch his coat vanish into the lavender light and feel the metronome's beat take up more space in his absence. 5 minutes later, I close the shop early. I say it's because the light has broken, but it's because the envelope has turned the air into an audience. I lock the door, drop the blinds, and set the sign to back in an hour. I carry the metronome with the blue ribbon to the back room where I keep the big things, the grandfather clocks and the public clocks that once gilded schools. The back room is louder, the chorus thick and warm, and for a moment the whisper of the speaker dissolves entirely into the tick. I place the metronome on the long table and open the envelope. There is a photograph inside. In it, I am standing in a dim room whose walls are paneled in wood so dark it drinks the light. The metronome is on a desk in front of me. My hands are resting on either side of it, palms down, fingers spread, as if I am framing a miracle. I am wearing the sweater I am wearing now, which is impossible. The ribbon is the color of hospital scrubs. Beside me stands a man, Julian. His hand is cupped over my right shoulder, the way you would hold the neck of a violin. On the back of the photograph, in neat block print, is written, asterisk, asterisk, if you sleep, leave the light on, asterisk, asterisk. The room wobbles around me like heat. The clocks do not waver. They are true to their work. I flip the photograph again and study the details as if details can hold the world still. The pattern of the rug, a lattice of vines, thorns slick with something like varnish, the pencil cup brass, stamped with a crest. The window, a rectangle of dusk with no reflection, my mouth slightly open as if I am about to answer a question. I did not take this photograph. I do not remember it being taken. I do not remember being in that room, but the way my shoulders drop tells me my body does. I am halfway to my phone to call my best friend Lena when something moves at the corner of my vision. A private shift in the air, the thing you notice in a mirror just before you turn. I look up. On the glass face of the biggest wall clock, breath has fogged a small oval. No one is here but me, and in the oval, as the fog thins, words are left behind in ghosts of oil and skin. Asterisk, asterisk, do not trust the fifth beat. Asterisk, asterisk, the metronome ticks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I press my fingers to my throat and count my pulse. It is not 88. It has a drag in it, a pause that feels like a foot in a door. I don't know what the fifth beat is, but I hear it as a space, and the space is familiar, the way a missing step in a staircase is familiar only once you've fallen through it. I take the blue ribbon from the bench and tie it around the metronome's neck, a makeshift scarf, absurd and serious. The words on it look like they were stitched by a careful hand under poor light. I turn the metronome so it faces me, as if to watch me and be watched, and carry it out to the front again. The shop feels less safe with it out of my sight. The bell chimes. The sign still says back in an hour, but the woman at the door looks like she will not be told no. Her lipstick is the clean red of a wound carefully sutured. Her scarf, the kind made for beauty, not warmth, is white as a lie told for love. She has the expression of someone who has not slept in a long time and has come to ask you to do something that will keep her up longer. Closed, I say. Open, she replies, and holds up a police badge in a leather wallet. I let her in. I'm Detective Rowan, she says. Her voice is not hard, but it arrived that way and never quite softened. I'm looking for Mira Orlov. I'm Mira, I say. The metronome is louder now, which is insane. Rowan's eyes flick to it, and for a moment she looks like a person who hears the same melody as you do but labels it with different notes. We have some questions about a patient of Dr. Merrick's, she says. He's been dead for decades, I say, because the fact feels like a boy. Patients linger, she replies. Therapy is a long room. You sound like a poet for a detective. Heba. And it's occupational, she says. She looks at the counters, the clocks, me. Did a man come in? Tall, camel coat, looks like he drinks coffee without liking it. Julian, I say before I can stop myself, and she tips her head as if considering whether to correct me. Dr. Julian Vale, she says instead. He consults for us and for himself. She steps closer to the metronome. That shouldn't be running. It should, I say. I wound it. My grandmother had one, she says, ignoring the contradiction, but it only ran in my grandfather's studio. She said it fed on attention. He was a piano teacher who made all his students cry. He died in the middle of a sonata. She's always liked music less since. Detective, I say, because if this goes on, I will float away from the floor. Who is the patient? Rowan looks at me like the answer is walking into the room. Her name is Cassia Poole, she says. We found her scarf by the river this morning. Someone saw her with a man last night near the old clinic, a man matching Dr. Vale's description. The clocks keep their allegiance to their own small truths. The metronome ticks without apology for being a cliché. I don't know her, I say, and feel a cold slide through me that is not a lie but isn't the truth either. I don't know Cassia as a named thing, a person with a way of tying her shoes or smiling. But the fifth beat slips and I have the sensation of a story I once told about someone who was not me but had my hands. Rowan watches my face the way you watch the ocean when someone you love is in it. I don't think you do, she says, to my relief. But I think you know something that might be useful. I don't know useful words, I say. Only useful rhythms. She does not laugh. We found this in a locker at the train station, she says, reaching into her coat. She pulls out a second envelope, thicker than Julian's, and sets it on the counter. It was addressed to second hand. No name. Inside were photographs. She doesn't slide it toward me. She keeps her hand on it, like a teller with money she is not yet convinced is yours. They seem to be taken through glass. All of them through glass. Windows, mirrors, displays, a performance. I wonder if the photographer was afraid of touching what they wanted, or what they wanted would vanish if they did, I say, and I should not. The intimacy of the words feels like something borrowed from a relationship I am not yet in. Rowan lifts her hand. The envelope is warm from her skin. I am about to open it when a sound happens that does not belong here. A ring, not the bell, not any clock. A tone that glides like a voice too sweet to be a warning. Rowan hears it too and steps toward the back. The sound draws us the way a child's cry draws, or a sudden silence before a storm. We pass the door to the back room, and everything stills. The clocks are counting. But I don't hear them as distinct. They are the sea again, and then I see it. On the long table, propped against the wall, is a mirror. I use it for checking second hands, to be sure they land true and not to the left or right of the mark. In the mirror, the metronome is visible, though the mirror does not face the bench. The blue ribbon around its neck is lusher, as if in reflection things are wetter, more saturated. The pendulum swings, tick, and then a shadow passes behind me in the glass, a tall dark that is not Rowan's and is not mine. Rowan turns. I turn. The room is empty. We stand together and feel stupid. Old places have old light, Rowan says, and it is meant to explain everything. Detective, I say, because the question will smolder me if I do not ask it. Do you trust Julian Vale? She answers so quickly I believe at least the speed. No. Then she breathes and edits herself into policy. I trust him to be himself, which is useful enough. And who is he? A man who believes in mercy when he does not owe it, and in pain when it is owed. A man who listens for beats other people don't hear. It is manter same desait. I can't stop myself. The fifth one. Rowan looks at the metronome. Her mouth shapes yes without saying it. He consults because he understands narratives, she says aloud. He's good at knowing who they're for and who they're from. He left something with me, I say. An envelope. I don't know why I tell her. Perhaps because the photograph inside made me feel like an actor who's missed a cue and is waiting for an audience to forgive her. She nods and says, as if gently mocking both of us. Of course he did. She touches 2 fingers to the counter where the envelope rests, the way Julian touched the metronome. Will you trust me to trust you with it? Then he's habbled. That is such a precise question that I can't hide from it. I will, I say. Rowan looks as if she may say something else, and then doesn't. She takes a card from her pocket, writes a number, slides it over. On the back of the card is printed an aphorism, asterisk, asterisk, if you sleep, don't lock the door. Asterisk, asterisk. I stare at it, startled. It's from my grandmother's kitchen, Rowan says, seeing my face. She put instructions everywhere. She was afraid of forgetting, or of being forgotten, which is worse. Rowan puts her hat on and is already moving toward the door. Ask me when I can tell you the difference. She leaves the smell of winter and something like violets. I lock the door and then, embarrassed by superstition, unlock it again and flip the sign to open, though I have no intention of serving anyone else today. I am alone with the envelopes and the person I become when I open them. I open Julian's first again because I need to verify the photograph is still the thing I remember and not a trick of stress. It is unchanged, me and Julian in a room that swallows light. The ribbon, the metronome, my mouth, about to confess something I will only know after I say it. I open Detective Rowan's and spill the contents gently onto the glass. There are 7 photographs. Each is shot through a barrier. In one, I am at the window of my own shop, looking in from the street at myself, reaching for a clock. The glass splits me from me. In another, I am stepping off a tram, and the shot is taken through the tram's door windows, my face framed by emergency instructions. Asterisk, asterisk, in case of fire, break glass, asterisk, asterisk. In a third, I am sleeping on my couch with the metronome on the floor like a warm animal. The shot is through the aquarium at the foot of the shelves. The water's distortion makes me look as if I'm underwater. Photograph 4 is the clinic room. This time Julian is not beside me. A chair has been moved closer to the desk, as if someone has stood in it to see me better. The metronome's pendulum in the photo is caught at the apex of its swing, and my eyes, even in stillness, are following it. Number 5 is nothing but a mirror frame and the suggestion of 2 figures, one an outline of me, one the kind of blur cameras make when they are asked to witness someone who does not want to be kept. Number 6 is a hand. My hand, I think, though I want it not to be, lifted and open as if waiting for something to be placed in it. Number 7 is a drawing taped to the inside of a glass door. It is a child's drawing of a blue ribbon around a brown triangle. My mouth opens to the air like fish. I flip the last photograph, and the words on the back are in the same neat block print as the other instruction aphorisms, as if a single hand were writing all of the commandments in my life, one careful line at a time. Asterisk, asterisk, if you love someone, don't count. Asterisk, asterisk. The metronome keeps counting anyway. A customer knocks and presses his face to the glass, sees my expression, and thinks better of it. The light outside deepens. The cafe's newscaster rehearses grief. Somewhere, a trolley's brake squeals like a long prescription for despair. In second hand, time organizes itself into obedience. On my bench, the blue ribbon is slightly damp to the touch. I lift the metronome and turn it, meaning nothing by it but needing relief from its constant witness, and feel something jog in the bass. A thud, small and hollow. I set it down and look for a seam. There is no keyhole. Merrick's metronome was made to be unintrusive, the kind of instrument that wants to pretend it is not watching you, even when your eyes are closed. I go to the shelf, take down a screwdriver fine as a needle, and consider the ethics of prying open a thing the dead use to keep their living truths. I am not his patient. I am not bound by fantasy. Still, my hands are careful in the way one is careful with the living. The base comes free like a secret unbuckled, and inside the cavity is what I both expected and did not. A small brass key, a scrap of paper, and a strip of negative film rolled around the key like a promise. The paper has the same script. Asterisk, asterisk. If you sleep, you will remember. Asterisk, asterisk. I stand there and listen to my heart mock me by keeping time, and for the first time in years, I say aloud the name I do not use, Anya. My name before Mira was Anya. I do not know why I stopped using it or when exactly the syllables grew a isthmus of water between them and the person who wore them. The sound of it in the shop is indecent. It changes the light. For a moment, all my clocks seem to stall to test whether I mean it. Then the metronome ticks again, small and smug. I unroll the negative. 6 frames, black silhouettes on amber, a room, a shoulder, a hand, a river, a man's mouth against my ear, the ribbon dark as a wound. I hold the strip up to the lamp and squint and see what I do not want. In the 5th frame, I am kissing Julian Vale. My hand is in his hair. The ribbon is around my wrist. The metronome is on the windowsill like a gull watching a wedding. The knock at the door this time is not a tentative customer. It has that hollow, 5-knuckled authority of law. I gather the photographs, the envelope, the key, and the film, and sweep them into the drawer of the register, my fingers moving with a speed that has been rehearsed and practiced and never once acknowledged. I turn the sign to closed and take a breath that is mostly permission. Detective Rowan stands there with a man I do not know. He is young in the way men are young when they were not supposed to be and have made a bargain with something to stay that way. He has the jaw of someone who will not be grateful and the eyes of someone who already is. His tie is wrong for his suit. He looks at me like I am a portrait he's seen and can't place. "Miss Orlov," Rowan says, "this is Officer High." She glances past me to the metronome. "I think we should go for a ride." "I don't like rides," I say, and then because for some reason honesty feels easier than denial. "Where?" "The old clinic," Hay says. He does not look away from me when he speaks. "I think you left something there." It is not a question. It is not a request. It is something older, a stitch pulled loose with 2 fingers. The metronome ticks. Tick, tick, tick. The 5th beat is a breath that isn't one. "I need a minute," I say. "Take 2, Rowan says, as if she knows that minutes in this shop lengthen when you look at them too hard. She turns her back to give me space, or because she is that kind of merciful, or because she already trusts me, and that is her problem. I go to the bench and, without thinking fully about it, set the metronome to 60, a beat per second. Something honest. I wind it exactly once. I think of Julian's hand on my shoulder in the photograph, and the look on his face that was not pity and was not triumph, but was the exact expression of someone who has heard you say your real name in your sleep. As we step into the bruised evening, my reflection in the shop window watches me leave. The glass keeps my shape like a promise. The door closes. The bell rings once, hard, and then, after a beat longer than it should be, rings again. Chapter 2. The door without a lock. The squad car smells like raincoats left to dry in a stairwell. Rowan drives. Officer High rides shotgun, his shoulders making the car feel narrower than it is. I sit behind Rowan and watch the city unspool as if it were a tape being rewound to the moment before I learned a story that rearranged me. "Do you have the metronome?" Rowan asks without turning her head. "In my bag," I say. The blue ribbon's embroidered instructions press through the canvas against my thigh like a palm. "Keep it close," she says. "Because it's evidence?" I ask. Rowan changes lanes without signaling. "Because it's you." Hay glances at me in the rearview mirror and then, as if second-guessing the intimacy of the act, looks away. He has the careful posture of someone preserving a fragile neutrality. I think of the sound in the back room, the shadow in the mirror that wasn't Rowan's or mine. The thin animal of unease scrapes its claws along my ribs. "You knew Marek's clinic?" I ask. "In a professional capacity," Rowan says. "He consulted on trauma cases before I was on the force. By the time I had a badge, he was dead, and the clinic was a rumor people used to explain why they forgot their keys. What's there now? An inheritance," she says. "Rooms accrue what people do to them. If you listen long enough, a room will tell you all its secrets, and then some lies for dessert." Hay snorts too sharp to be amusement, too quiet to be contempt. "You don't like ghosts?" I ask him. "I like them fine," he says, still looking out the window. "I just don't like when living people use them as excuses." The clinic sits in a district where the city forgets itself mid-sentence, streets that lead nowhere, signage in alphabets from closures ago. The building is a dark rectangle against the sky, the windows boarded from the inside like shy eyelids, paint peels in long curls the color of tea-stained teeth. A rusted brass plaque still hangs beside the door. The letters Dr. Merrick Psychiatry faint as if a dream has been scratched at until it bled. We step inside. The air is cold in the way that suggests not an absence of heat, but a presence of attention. Dust has gathered in the corners like old cats. The lobby is cramped. A check-in desk with a bell that, if you press it, probably rings in a place where no one has listened in years. Rowan's flashlight cuts a clean white path. Hay's beam is steadier, broader. Mine is the gold of my phone, more theater than Tool. "Upstairs," Rowan says. He saw patients on the second floor. The third was storage, the fourth a rumor, the fifth a story. Hay finishes. I feel the number like a hand on my back. On the staircase wall, someone has written in sharp pencil, "Asterisk, asterisk, if you sleep, count backwards from 5. Asterisk, asterisk." The words have been rubbed at with a thumb, but the gouges remain. I don't remember writing them, and I do. "Who put that there?" I ask. "Who do you think?" Rowan says, but her voice holds gentleness now, not accusation. She gestures with her light. "Watch your step. The building is old, and old things are tired of holding us." The second-floor hallway is the same wood as the photograph from the envelope, dark paneled walls that drink the light. Doors with frosted glass transoms line the corridor, each with a little brass nameplate, most empty now, some bearing labels that feel like costumes: consultation, observation, private. A faint echo trickles ahead of us, the idea of a sound rather than the sound itself. At the third door on the left, I stop. The frosted transom reads asterisk asterisk, M asterisk asterisk in a ghost of paint. The letter a beginning and an ending both. This one, I say, not because of the paint, but because my body leans toward it like iron. Rowan tries the knob. It turns. The door opens on a room whose shadow settles around us like a formal garment. The desk is where the photograph said it would be. The rug with the lattice of vines is here, its thorns dark with varnish. The pencil cup with the crest is a brass lozenge against the wood. The window is a rectangle of failing light. The air carries the faint, medicinal sweetness of old oil and someone else's past. I set the metronome down in the center of the desk. The blue ribbon cascades, its embroidery catching the flashlights like a line of stars. I slide the lid open. Before I touch the pendulum, I feel it, a pressure, a gathering, the room taking a breath. Don't wind it, Hay says. Rowan's flashlight finds his face. The expression there is a held-back verdict. Because? Let her, Rowan says. I set the weight at 60 honest seconds. No trick and thumb the pendulum free. Tick. The sound is clean the first 2 swings, a small axe splitting silence. On the 3rd it warms, on the 4th it settles. On the 5th beat, something opens inside my head with the soft click of a key turned in a careful lock. The desk is no longer just a desk. It is the place where my hands learned the exact distance between 2 acts, choosing and obeying. I am standing where I stood in the photograph, palms flat, fingers spread, hearing the metronome call me to the edge of sleep and then hold me there, the way a hand at the nape can say both stay and go on. And Anya, someone says, and the name is not a knife this time, but a bridge. Julian Vale stands in the doorway, the camel coat shadowing him into a cathedral shape. He has the look of a man who walked into a room prepared to be hated and will accept it without argument if that is the price of being allowed in. Rowan's body squares in a way my own cannot. High's light arcs from Julian's throat to his hands, as if measuring where the truth would most efficiently enter him. You shouldn't be here, Rowan says. It sounds like a thing she has said to him before. I was invited, Julian says. He does not look away from me when he says it. Mira, Anya, I wasn't sure which of you would be here, so I brought words for both. Start with the ones that mean I won't handcuff you, Rowan says. I didn't put Cassia in the river, Julian says. If she is in the river, his voice folds strangely on the if, not sarcasm, not hope, something like grammar gone uncertain. She isn't, I say before I know how I know it. The certainty comes from the place behind my ribs where the 5th beat used to be a threat. Now it is an instruction. She was here, I add, and the words decide themselves. She is here. Where? He asks, too quickly. Julian's eyes flick, and for the first time since he walked in, they leave me. They find Hay and rest there a fraction too long. The air tightens. You know the building, Julian says to him, very gently, as if a word spoken too loudly would upset the equilibrium of a delicate experiment. You always did. I know what you type into reports when no one dies, Hay says, and the pleasantness in his voice is all knives. I know what you call harm when you're not allowed to say love. Rowan moves half a step so she stands between them, her body an argument about what this room will and will not be allowed to contain. All right, she says. Everyone stay exactly themselves and say everything carefully. Dr. Vale, if you take one more step into this room without telling me something I can check, I will personally staple you to your coat. Julian tips his head in an acknowledgement that is not quite a bow. The key, he says to me. You found it? I nod. and the brass in my pocket answers with the memory of cool metal. It opens the fifth room, he says. There are 4 floors, Rowan says. Rooms don't always count the way we do, Julian replies. He gestures at the wall to his left, where the paneling seems unbroken until you stand where we stand and see that the grain repeats just a little too neatly at chair rail height. Marek had a private observation suite, a place where he conducted what he called fidelity experiments. He believed that certain patterns persisted beyond the conscious mind, that if you could find the beat someone's life had hidden inside itself, you could bring the rest of them back in on time. Like a conductor, I say. Julian's mouth twists. Like a thief with a tuning fork. And Cassia? Rowan asks. She was part of the cohort, Julian says. He looks at me as if asking permission to tell the truth about me in front of me. I stand very still, the ribbon cool against my wrist. So were you. The room brightens, not with light but with recognition. I remember the waiting room's chairs arranged so no one could sit exactly opposite anyone else. I remember the contralto of Marek's voice and the way he said my old name as if it were a coin he could rub between his fingers until the monarch wore off and the metal shone. I remember Cassia's laugh, whipped thin by fear and then thickened by defiance. I remember we counted 1, 2, 3, 4. I say aloud. And? Julian asks softly. Don't, Hay says. But his warning arrives like theater. He wants me to. I close my eyes. The metronome ticks. The 5th beat is a space you could set a glass down in. Asterisk, asterisk, 5. An image unfurls. No, not an image. A room that is both this room and not. A mirror set in the paneling where now there is only wood. A narrow pane that allows someone to see without being seen. I am on the other side of that glass with Cassia, our hands an inch apart, the blue ribbon around both our wrists like a wedding vow no one else would acknowledge. We are watching me. I am in the chair. The metronome on the desk. Marek in his shirt sleeves, his palm lifted just above my shoulder as if he could hold a name in the air like smoke. What was your instruction? Julian asks. If you sleep, I say, and the words arrive with the ease of a lullaby. Leave the light on. Why? Rowan asks. So I could find myself, I say. So I wouldn't be tempted to lock the door on the person I had been. Julian nods, as if I have just recited the logic that saves ships. The 5th beat wasn't just a count, he says. It was a suggestion, a pause where Marek could slip instructions in past the parts of you that refused to be persuaded. The 5th beat is where he taught you to forget. And you? Rowan asks, not looking away from him. I tried, Julian says, and the humility of it stops me. After Marek died, I tried to turn those pauses into places to rest instead of holes to fall through. We failed as often as we succeeded. We? Rowan presses. He looks at me, and something in the room loosens, as if it had been braced against a storm that has decided to pass us by. We, he says. Hay steps closer to the wall. His flashlight finds the repeat in the wood grain, the seam hidden under decades of apathy and polish. He runs his fingers along the chair rail, as if he can read in it a sentence he wrote and forgot. If there's a room, he says, let's open it. He steps back to give me space, and for a moment his face in the flashlight spill is the face I saw in the mirror in the shop, a shadow arranged into a man. He watches my hands as if the way I turn a key could solve a problem he has had his whole life. The key fits. I wasn't sure until it sank into the lock with that private little sigh some locks make when they recognize their partner. I turn. Something inside the wall lifts. The panel swings inward on hidden hinges with the dignity of an old brevet revealing a secret commission. Behind it, a narrow corridor swallowed in dark. We move along it with our lights, guiding the way an usher's hand would guide at a theater's aisle. The air is cooler here, the quiet deeper. At the corridor's end, a second door waits, this one painted the pale blue of the ribbon. The paint is new, where everything else is old. A small sign has been tacked at eye level. The letters are neat enough to be a surgeon's. Asterisk, asterisk, if you sleep, do not lock the door. Asterisk, asterisk, someone's been here, Rowan says. Hay studies the sign too long. His light trembles the way a hand does when it is holding its breath. I open the door. The fifth room is smaller than I thought it would be, and bigger than any room deserves to be that holds 2 chairs, a desk, and a pane of glass. The glass is dark on our side, a mirror. On the other side, the faintest impression of a space that widens as your eyes adjust, the suggestion of a stool, the ghost of a lamp. The desk is arranged with the carefulness of an experiment. A metronome's empty square, a blotter, a pencil, a brass cup, a small bell. The chair in the observation side is positioned where I remember standing in the photograph, too close to the glass for comfort, exactly right for confession. Something moves behind the mirror. Cassia? I say. A hand touches the glass from the far side. For a second, all I can see is the outline of palm and fingers. The hand is small, the wrist wrapped in white. The scarf, back, Rowan says to the room, though her voice lurches toward tenderness. Julian steps to the desk and gestures at the empty square. I pull the metronome from my bag and set it there. It looks relieved. The ribbon runs like a river across the blotter. I lift the lid. I do not wind it. I do not have to. It begins. Tick. The hand on the other side of the glass stills. The scarf slides behind the wrist like a tamed thing. Cass, I say, and the nickname feels too natural to be improvisation. Birdheart. I know you're tired. A breath fogs the glass. It draws a circle and then, impatient, a slash through it. A cipher we used to use when words risked being confiscated. Julian's voice lowers into the register he uses when the truth is heavier than language. Cassia, it's Julian. We're going to open the door. Listen to me. Stay with us. Rowan tilts her head toward High. Keys? He shakes his head once. The motion's strange, and then produces a ring from his pocket. They chime small, the way a long marriage might. You had them, Rowan says. Not a question. Hay's pleasantness returns. A grin, a shade too thin. I'm a fan of preparation. He hands the keys to me. I can, Rowan begins. She won't come if I do it, I say. She'll think it's another test. I move to the side door, the one that leads into the far half of the fifth room, the side where you disappear and become audience. The lock turns. The door opens on a cool air that is not empty of breath. Cassia stands just inside, very still. She has the kind of stillness I associate with people who have learned to hide inside their bodies while other people are looking at them. The scarf around her wrist has been wrapped and wrapped until it looks like a bandage. Her mouth is the red of someone who bit it to stay awake. Hello, she says. Her voice is hoarse in the way wood is hoarse after rain. Are you me? The question is not insane. It is grammar rewriting itself in the presence of mirrors. I am, I say, and I am not. She nods like a person who is used to statements that hold contradictions as if they were babies. Her eyes slide past me and catch on the metronome's pendulum, visible through the glass. She watches it the way a seafarer watches a lighthouse that once called her home and once called her onto the rocks. "They said you'd come," she says. "Who?" "The man with the nice hands," she says, and her mouth flickers into something like a smile that happens far away from where her body is standing. "He told me not to count when I was afraid." Julian's face in the mirror has gone very still. "Cassia," he says, and the word is a blessing he brings his own appetite to. "Come around, please." "I can't," she says easily, and I recognize the ease as scaffolding. "Because?" Rowan's voice is careful. "Because the door's locked," she says, then leans forward and presses her fingers to the inside handle, showing us that it turns without resistance, but it doesn't feel unlocked. My head says yes and my stomach says no. "And, hey," I show her my empty hands. "What would make it feel unlocked?" Cassia steps closer. Up close, she looks like a person who fell asleep in a drawer and woke up in a story. "If you say the thing," she says. "What thing?" Hay asks, his tone too casual. "The one people said when we didn't want to forget to breathe," she says, and looks at me. And in that look I find that we are two people, and we are one person, and we are a room. "If you love someone," I say, the words touching the inside of my mouth like lips that have been here before. "Don't count." Cassia exhales. The scarf loosens a fraction. She takes a step that is not a step so much as an edit to a sentence. Then another. Behind me, there is a click that does not belong to a lock. It belongs to a gun being reminded of its obligations. Rowan's light breaks toward Hay. His weapon is a precise black comma at the edge of the sentence of the room. "No," Rowan says. "Yes," Hay replies. He is not excited. He is correct. His face is the shape a punishment takes on the way to being assigned. "I do like ghosts," he says, and now he smiles in a way that is all childhood and no child. "But I don't like waste." "Hey," Julian says softly, and the softness cuts. "Don't," Hay says without looking at him. "Don't do that voice. You used it on me when you were a student who wanted to be a god. Remember? In the studio with the old metronome? The one that would only run when I was inside the room." He shifts his grip. The gun never wavers. "Tell the class, Dr. Vale, who was the fifth?" Julian's throat moves. He doesn't answer. "I was," Hay says, his smile widening into something that looks like injury sucked thin. "Only I wasn't a patient, not really. I was the instrument. Marek wanted to know if rhythm could cross from one body to another, if a heart could be taught to beat for someone else's secrets. He taught me to count you into sleep, Anya. He taught me to listen. He taught me to keep you there." The air retracts around my lungs. "You photographed her," Rowan says, "through glass," and fails. Hay's look at her is almost admiring. "Touching breaks the spell," he says. "Glass keeps it pretty." "And Cassia?" Julian asks. The first question he's asked that costs him blood. "What did you do?" Hay tilts his head toward the mirror. Cassia has frozen again, caught between door and desk, present only to the metronome. "She took you away from me," he says. "She told you to stop counting. Do you know what it feels like to be the beat in someone else's life and then be left with only your own? It's too loud. It's nothing." "You put the scarf by the river," Rowan says. "I made a story," Hay corrects. "So the city would hear it and make a path. So you'd all come to the room where the story belongs." "And then?" I ask. "Then we go back to what we were supposed to be," Hay says. "We finish the experiment. We make the fifth beat pure. No more pauses. No more little doors for other people to slip their hands through and steal. "Hey," Julian says. He steps with exquisite slowness to the desk and places 2 fingers on either side of the metronome, not touching it, shaping the air around it. "You don't want that." Hay laughs, a tiny sound like a coin put on a railroad track and pressed flat. "You're very in love with what people don't want, body aid." "I'm very in love," Julian says, "and the past tense I expected doesn't come, and the present tense sits in the room like a truth set down and left to cool. Put the weapon down." "Or what?" Hay asks. "You'll count me to sleep?" "I'll ask you to remember," Julian says, his voice not a trick, not a theft, only the thing it is. "Who put the instructions in this room? Who stitched the ribbon? Who decided the door shouldn't lock?" Hay's mouth shuts. It is shatteringly quiet in the pause after. The metronome's beat enters the silence and becomes it. "You did," I say, and the knowledge arrives with the lightness of something heavy finally put where it belongs. "You wrote them, all of them, not for me, for yourself." The gun doesn't drop. It lowers a fraction under a weight we can't see. "When he died," I say, "Marek, the name of Pebble, you were the only one who knew where we all were in our stories. You thought if you could keep us from finishing, we'd stay here with you. So you left yourself instructions for mercy. Hands above the blanket, light on, door unlocked, because locked doors make you tell lies," Cassia says from her side of the glass. And her voice has that clean truth in it that shows up only when someone decides to be unafraid of what the truth will make of them. Hay's eyes flick to her, and in that flick I see the child he was before someone taught him the 5th beat. I step toward him. It isn't bravery, it's grammar. "Don't count," I say to him. "Listen." He flinches. "To what?" "To us," I say. "To yourself. To the room." Julian very gently moves the weight on the metronome up a notch, then down, then up again, nothing drastic, only enough to let the beat wobble, to keep it from becoming a trench we all fall into by habit. He speaks in the way he might speak to someone on a riverbank, who has decided the water will understand them before people will. "He on," he says, and it is the first time I've heard his given name. "You were never a 5th, you were a 1st. Without you, the rest of us would have counted ourselves to dust. You kept the time because you knew what time meant. It isn't punishment, it's attention." Hay's hand relaxes not at the words but at the name. He closes his eyes as if someone has turned off a fluorescent light. When he opens them, they are not absolved, not broken, only a little less alone. He lowers the gun. Rowan moves in the same instant, fast, precise, inevitable, her hand on his wrist, the weapon moving into her other hand as if it had always belonged there. The sound that leaves Hay then is not a sob, not a laugh, not a word. It is the metronome heard from a great distance, the idea of a beat you can finally walk away from if you choose. Cassia comes around the door. She hesitates only once at the narrow waist of the corridor and then steps into the half of the room where we stand. She is smaller than her stillness implied. Up close, the red of her mouth is a mercy she has given herself. She looks at me and then at Julian and then, unexpectedly, at Rowan. "Thank you," she says. "For what?" Rowan asks, wary of being given a role she didn't audition for. "For not counting," Cassia says, "when the city said you should." Rowan accepts the compliment with a tilt of her head that means later. She snaps the cuffs on high with a civic ceremony that has the grace of a ritual and none of its vanity. "You're going to make a statement," she says. "A long one. You're going to tell the truth until the truth is tired, and then you're going to let it sleep with the light on. He nods. He does not ask for permission to be forgiven. He does not perform remorse. He looks at me once, the way a student looks at a teacher who has finally told them the answer that lets them leave the class without breaking the door. We flood back into the hallway, and for a second, the ordinary ugliness of the clinic, its scuffed baseboards, its exhausted paint, feels beautiful. The fifth room closes behind us with a sound that is almost like a book finishing the sentence it needed to write. Outside, night has lifted its blue. The rain has started the way an argument does when both parties are too tired to be clever. Rowan puts High into the back of the car, reads him rights that sound like an instruction, sets someone stitched on a ribbon. You have the right, you have the right. If you cannot, if you do not. She turns to us. I'm taking him in, she says. I'm going to need you both later. She looks at Julian. You especially. He lifts his hands in surrender that does not diminish him. Of course, it is Noir. And you, she says to me. And the look in her eyes is the softest thing she has let me see. Go home, or wherever is next for you. Don't count. She is gone before I can say anything that would turn the moment into a debt. The rain thickens. The ribbon on the metronome darkens to the color of veins in particular light. Coffee? Julian asks. Absurd and exactly right. Some place with glass, I say. I think I miss it. We end up in the cafe next to my shop, because that is where the city puts people who want to begin again without making a speech. The barista has the cordless radio turned down low. The newscaster's voice hums a correction. The scarf by the river was left by someone else. The woman seen near the clinic, allegedly Cassia Poole, has been located. She is cooperating with authorities. There is no body. There is no crime that language will admit to yet. Cassia sits across from me and holds her cup with both hands like a person who remembers at the last second not to pray in public. I made the drawings, she says, as if confessing a theft. The triangle with the ribbon, I stuck them inside doors because I thought future us would have to come through them. They were perfect, I say. They were better than photographs. It's say, she smiles the way a person does when you return to them a piece they thought they had given away for good. We are quiet a long time. Quiet that is not absence but fullness. When she leaves with a plain promise to see me tomorrow, her shoulders are a different shape than when we found her. The scarf is in her pocket. The ribbon is on my table. Julian turns his cup in small half circles, as if auditioning angles. I didn't mean to make a theater of you, he says. You did, I say, and let the fairness of it sit with us. But theater is how I understood what I was in. He as sable to nay, he nods, a small grief in it that isn't sorry for what's done so much as aware that even goodness arrives in the wrong outfit sometimes. May I tell you something unprofessional? You can try, I say. I'm very bad at counting rules. I fell in love with the way you refused to be cured, he says. Not because you wanted to stay hurt, but because you understood that the hurt had a shape you were not willing to forget without learning what it had written under your skin. The sentence sits between us. It has weight. It doesn't crush. In the negative, I say, we were kissing. His eyes close for a second and open again. He does not pretend surprise. He does not pretend to have not wanted to. We were very bad at being careful. I don't remember the badness, I say. I remember the care. He looks like someone who has been handed a reprieve and is resisting the urge to look for the clause that will revoke it. I left the envelope because I didn't trust my timing. I wanted you to choose me from a place I wasn't conducting. I did, I say, because the word feels like a key. I am. His hand is on the table, palm up, not touching and not. It is an offer to leave the light on. I set my fingers in his. The metronome on the table between us is quiet. The room carries its own rhythm. A woman laughing at a text 5 tables over, the milk frother's hiss, the rain writing its simple manuscript against the glass. We don't count any of it. We let it happen. When we cross into the shop, the bell's double ring splits the night. I flip the sign to open without meaning to and leave it that way. The clocks accept us easily. In the back room, the breath on the wall glass has faded, but the message has not. Asterisk, asterisk, do not trust the 5th beat. Asterisk, asterisk. I lift the metronome to the bench. Julian stands behind me and rests his hand an inch above my shoulder, the way he did in the photograph, the way Mira did in the room, the way people do when they know their touch would be too much and their absence would be a wound. What do we trust then? I ask. Time, he says. Time lies, I say, not because I believe it, but because the argument is a game we get to play now that the important things have been decided. Not always, he says. Not when it's watched by someone who loves you. I wind the metronome once. The weight slide is a small silver decision. I set it to 72, a walking pace, the speed of a person going nowhere particular with someone they like. The pendulum's first swing is a question. The second is an answer. The third is a correction. The fourth is an agreement. On the 5th beat, I do not wait for anything to be inserted. I let the space be a space. I let it be a breath only, nothing owed to anyone else's will. Would you like to sleep? Julian asks, low, like an invitation to stay awake. If I sleep, I say, dizzy with the rightness of the answer, keep your hands above the blanket. He laughs, not at me but with pleasure, at the order of the world we get to make now. Deal. We leave the light on. We don't lock the door. We don't count. In the morning, people come in to buy a kitchen timer, to repair a grandfather clock, to stand in the chorus and feel less alone. Cassia arrives with hair damp from weather, a clear newness in her face. She brings with her the smallest bell I have ever seen and asks if I can make it sound like it belongs to someone who will call her home for dinner. We set it on the bench and listen to what it already knows how to do. Rowan appears sometime between first coffee and second. She does not knock. She looks at the metronome and then at me and chooses to be smug only in her eyes. Statement, I ask. Very long, she says. Full of nouns, almost no adjectives. Ideal. And you? I ask Hay without meaning to, but he isn't here. Rowan's broad hand on the counter answers anyway. He's somewhere he can be quiet and important, she says. We're thinking of stitching instructions above the bunk. Hands above the blanket? I ask. Always, she says, and slides a card across the counter with a number written on the back. For when you need someone to count badly with you, after she's gone, I open the drawer where I hid the photographs and the negative and the key. The envelopes are still there, but they feel lighter, as if stories lose weight when they are told aloud in front of witnesses who don't try to correct them. I take out the photograph of me and Julian in the clinic room. I don't put it in a frame. I pin it under the blotter the way you pin a pressed leaf private proof of a season. On the back, in block print, because I want to talk to the person I used to be in a language she will respect, I write ****. If you love someone, don't count, asterisk, asterisk. The day does what days do, arrives, performs, departs. When the cafe's wireless bleeds a little into our ceiling speaker, the anchor talks about a city that is learning to tell its stories without pretending they were never told before. I am less interested in news. I am more interested in the way the light happens across the glass and makes our faces our own. At close, I wind the metronome exactly once. I set it to the pace of walking with a friend, walking home, walking into a room that has waited its whole life to be called by your name. The pendulum swings. 1, 2, 3, 4. On 5, my breath arrives all by itself, uncounted and generous. We leave the light on. We do not lock the door. We go upstairs. We sleep. And in the morning, time unhurt, unweaponized, not a prison but a page waits, steady as a heart that belongs only to itself and to whomever it has chosen, and the beat it keeps is ours.